Currently on screen is the winner for the last video's Steam code raffle. Make sure you have contact information under your profile so that I can reach out to you and you can claim the Steam code of your choice. You can look in the description below to find a complete list of games for your selection. To find out how you can win a game of your choice, just stick around to the end of the video. Thank you for your time, and now on to the main feature. I'm playing something almost every week, and sometimes I want to talk about it and give you a vertical slice. So stick with me for some lightning reviews. This week, on the chopping block. This week I've been playing Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. The modern port is by Asper, with the original by Lucasfilm back when they made games and before they were endlessly f***ing the hopes and dreams of creative developers working on things like Project 1313. Look it up. Anyway, after last week's endeavor down the route of the esoteric, uncanny, and uncomfortable, I wanted to go for something to cleanse my palate. That being said, I decided to reach for my limited run published copy of one of my old-time favorites. Now, I will be trying to give this a fair look through modern glasses, but it should be stated up front that I love this title. Mostly because of the fact that the N64 was the game system that I consider myself as having grown up with as a gamer, and I had it on that. One thing that is significantly different from the N64 version is the inclusion of Fmv Cut Scenes. Joy. I'm so glad we moved out of that. Nonetheless, it does give the title a little bit more insight on the tracks and environments that you'll eventually be speeding around. Side note, according to Wikipedia, even by the Legends community, Episode 1 Racer is considered non-canon for those that obsessively care about Star Wars continuity. I don't, but I have at least one friend that I believe does. Speaking of official Star Wars canon, as far as the movies go, I don't really get up in arms to love or dislike any of them, even the modern iterations. I see why some people hate them, I see why some people like them, I've watched all of them, and I don't particularly care one way or the other. I'll rewatch most of them, but I consider Episodes 2 and 3 to kind of be the low points. I consider Episode 1 to actually be towards the top of the Star Wars movies, and one of the reasons for that is the pod racing scene. I'd argue that it's one of the best movie racing scenes in general, and it makes sense that it would be well suited for a gaming adaptation. Hence today's review. Now, once you start to get control and can do things like navigate menus, you start to notice that this game has a lot of small flourishes that show a bit of passion. The way the backgrounds animate or how upgrades are presented to you through a trip to the junkyard or shop. Another small detail that most people probably didn't know is that the original actors for Anakin Skywalker and Sebulba actually reprised their roles to provide the voice acting for their respective characters. Once the gameplay actually starts, you find that the racing is actually very satisfying. There's a tangible sense of speed, and there's even more small and subtle elements to discover that can get you fairly immersed into the races. Through a few tricks of the controls, you can activate a boost that you can deploy almost whenever so long as your engines are cool enough to allow it, and you can tilt your pod racer to be vertical in order to navigate narrower crevices in the track. You can take damage while racing that'll begin to affect the stability of your pod racer, but vehicles also feature a repair module that you can utilize in real time on the track for the cost of some speed, but the guarantee that you'll regain some integrity and be able to take more blows around the track. Heck, once you unlock Sebulba, you can double tap the taunt button in order to activate a flamethrower that shoots at your right side. I couldn't tell if it actually damaged my opponents, but I did get an achievement for using it on them 10 times. While the game has a great sense of speed and the menus and gameplay are filled with details that enhance the experience, the sound design is a mixed bag. I mentioned the voice acting briefly, which doesn't really take away from the experience. The sound effects of the vehicle's turbo boosts and various impact sounds are all fine. However, one element that I eventually took umbrage with was the soundtrack. From what I can gather, it seems they simply took the John Williams action scene scores from Episode 1 and recycled them into the races. This doesn't work for me. A perfect example for a score that translates well into a game is Doom 2016's soundtrack by Mick Gordon. The primary reason why it works so well is that the soundtrack was specifically made for the game. It's dynamic, and the intensity of the music fluctuates by actively analyzing the situations around the player and the circumstances and conditions that they are actively in. It may have been a bit much asking for something so similar back in the day, but in the very least they could have gone for a more muted or better adaptable soundtrack that could more comprehensively cover the atmosphere of a race. The lightsaber fight and space battle to John Williams' Duel of the Fates is an iconic moment, but it does not have the same impact when just bumming along a straightaway. By the way, if I seem to be sparing with certain music or movie segments, it's because YouTube is still a nightmare with copyright. Speaking of things that suck, one thing that I occasionally came across was areas of specific tracks that seemed to punish you due to some jagged but unseen world geometry that could instantaneously take you out. These portions of tracks come across as buggy or potentially unpolished. It's also worth noting that I've actually played this a few times on different versions. My PC Steam version had a rather specific issue where alt-tabbing would cause the game to lose functionality, and the longer I left it running, there was the increased likelihood of the graphics just absolutely bugging out until the game was entirely non-functional. In my experience, the console ports are at least much more stable, but they all shared the same issue of potentially dangerous track geometry. Another minor issue I had was that some tracks outstay their welcome. While some have details that make them come across as vibrant and lively, there's others that, once you've experienced them through, don't really have much to look at. With that in mind, I feel that some tracks would have benefited from being a 2-lap format instead of 3. Lastly, again, this may come down to your own individual taste, but the game isn't exactly content-rich. Most individuals can probably experience the game has to offer in about 5 hours, and that includes beating all the tracks on standard and mirror modes. One tip for if you're going in to get all achievements: make sure you set the prize money to the all or nothing setting, because otherwise you'll likely not have enough in order to get all the upgrades for your pod racer. On that note, I did get the Platinum Trophy on the PlayStation version. To reiterate, I love this game. It's an area of nostalgia and comfort for me. Barring a few tracks, it's competently made and just feels good to play when I want something fast and visceral. Some elements haven't aged well, but I heartily recommend this for anyone who's a fan of arcade racing titles. Maybe just bring your own personal favorite song remix, unless you're one for poorly matched orchestral sweeps. If you stuck around for this long, then I wager you want to find out how to get your own free Steam game of your choice. All you have to do is leave a comment that wouldn't violate Twitter's terms of service. That's it. A winner will be selected 1 week from the publishing of the video that you're currently watching. Again, just make sure you have contact information under your personal YouTube profile so that I can reach out to you to present you with your choice of Steam code. Again, a complete list of titles available is in the description below. Just make sure you subscribe because I do this with every video until I run out of Steam codes. And winning once will not preclude you from the chance of winning again. So until the next video, have a good one.